The biggest news coming out of the United States is the death of the former President George Bush, but senior U.S. President, or current U.S. President, I beg your pardon, Donald Trump seems to be headed for troubled waters now that his former lawyer Michael Cohen has taken a plea deal. Cohen has made allegations about Trump's role in financial violations during his campaign and about possible false statements made to Congress. Let's get you a wrap of the landscape with the Daily Maverick's associate editor Brooks Spector. Brooks, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming in. So, these allegations by Michael Cohen, how significant are they in the context of the ever-growing criticism of Donald Trump?
Well, let's take this scandal step back a bit and say there are really several strains to it. There's the one issue, which is the cyber hacking and the possibility that members of Donald Trump's entourage or his campaign were somehow involved in it to the extent that they either knew it was happening or were hoping to get leverage by knowing about it, or were encouraging it, or were participating in it. That's stream A. Stream B is the conflicted circumstances of Donald Trump and his aides in terms of his business dealings with Russia. And in this case, this is where Michael Cohen is particularly important, because if you believe his testimony now that he's taken the plea deal, Donald Trump and a number of his aides, including Michael Cohen himself, were involved in negotiating the possibility of Trump building an apartment building hotel in Moscow right through the first half of the campaign into the convention and on through July. And if that were the case, then Mr. Trump and a number of his other colleagues are obviously in a bit of hurt, because they have repeatedly said up until last week that no, there were no business dealings during the campaign. Now Donald Trump is busy saying, well, it was okay because I was a private citizen, and I was a private citizen and everything is fine, and I was a private citizen. It's kind of a weak defense, because it isn't just what the business dealings were, it's whether or not any of that might have been construed as campaign contributions, in addition to the fact that he was not telling the truth to the people.
And it is to be seen, isn't it, Brooks, in the context of the ongoing investigation in the United States into alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 election that saw Trump become president.
That's where the two strains come together.
And he's also now found himself in a tough spot, having to constantly deny that he and the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, have some sort of dodgy relation. So how does he maneuver himself out of this one, given that his current explanation hasn't gone down so well?
Well, part of his real problem is that Michael Cohen has given various bits of information to the special prosecutor, and other people have given testimony to the special prosecutor, and undoubtedly the special prosecutor now has a room full of documents obtained through various subpoenas and other means, and Donald Trump's statements will be at variance with some of this. Whether significantly or insignificantly is a question we don't know yet, but it's almost impossible to believe that all of the things he has said match up precisely with all of the timelines, all of the other people who have already been charged or under investigation, and that's what they call the perjury trap.
Michael Cohen, the lawyer himself, the now former lawyer of Donald Trump, Trump says he's a liar, he's weak. What about his credibility in this whole saga, given that Cohen has already admitted lying?
Well, ask yourself, would you hire a lawyer for 10 years and then suddenly dump him because he was weak, stupid, and a liar? The answer probably is no. But his explanation, Michael Cohen's explanation, is that he and several other aides were busy trimming their stories so as to not put Donald Trump the candidate, then Donald Trump the president, into difficulty, so that all the different stories would line up nicely and there wouldn't be major space between them. Now, one of the problems for any witness is that if you've lied once, then there's always a presumption, you could lie a second time. But again, I go back to the idea of the special prosecutor has lots of other documentary evidence, and the question will be how much that stitches up nicely with Michael Cohen's current story as opposed to the one he told up until recently.
Are we likely to see then Michael Cohen be the one who ends up going to prison and Donald Trump perhaps riding off into the sunset and pursuing a second term as some had predicted he would at the beginning of his presidency?
Well, I think Michael Cohen is hoping rather frenetically or fervently that his cooperation with the special prosecutor will be sufficient to give him very light sentencing or very light punishment, rather than being taken off to the big house and given orange coveralls for a very long time. We will see how that plays out. You'll notice that Paul Manafort, who was the campaign manager for the Trump campaign in 2016, currently has a pair of those one-size-fits-all coveralls for lying to the special prosecutor and other problems. Will Donald Trump face the music? Well, keep in mind that the election that just happened, that midterm election, brought in a Democratic Party-controlled House of Representatives. That's not so much important as the fact that by controlling that House, they now have the power to subpoena documents and witnesses and to schedule and hold hearings. And the committee chairman, because the Democrats will now be chairs of the various committees, in particular Adam Schiff, who is the House Intelligence Committee chair and the man who is the chair for government operations, will have a crucial role to play in deciding how the investigations in Congress will work out, who will be subpoenaed, and what evidence they will be compelled to deliver.
We're running out of time here, but I'm curious to get your view on a more broader look at Donald Trump's week so far. He traveled to the G20 summit in Argentina over the weekend with other world leaders. What came out of there was a pause in the trade war between China and the United States, but that also has a 90-day condition to it. Trump also made an effort to avoid the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. That is in relation to the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. He also had said he was going to meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin, then he wasn't, and then the White House confirming that they had some sort of informal engagement.
Had eye contact, maybe.
How would you wrap up his trip to Argentina?
Well, Donald Trump doesn't like these international trips. That's a given. He especially doesn't like them when there are these large gatherings of leaders from 5, 6, 20 countries. He finds them unpleasant, and he finds, since he doesn't like multilateral agreements in the first place, this is the wrong place for him to practice what he believes is his special gift in diplomacy. He couldn't meet Vladimir Putin basically because the optics would have been terrible after a week in which the Russia investigation was on the news day after day after day. He couldn't meet the Saudi Crown Prince because Jamal Khashoggi's murder was in the news day after day after day. He had to meet Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, because of the trade conflict that has already been jacked up into a major issue. But what they did, of course, was, just as you say, they agreed for a 90-day pause. The referee blew the whistle, they all trotted off to tea, and they get to come back. And if they don't reach a final settlement, which seems unlikely that they would do that, they may just continue the discussion, issue another 90-day period, because the communique that came out of this one was that the Trump administration would not impose additional sanctions, and at this point, and the Chinese would agree to import substantial amounts of American products, most especially agriculture. But the truth of the matter is they're already importing enormous amounts of American agricultural product. The trade war was what began to dial that back.
All right. Brooks, let's leave it there. That's Brooks Spector. He is associate editor with the Daily Maverick, giving us a wrap of the recent developments in the United States as far as President Donald Trump is concerned.